First, live, local. This is Fox 12 Now.
Hello everyone, this is Fox 12 Now. I'm Greg Nibbler. As always, thank you for joining us wherever you are. We do appreciate it. Of course, we are live streaming here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, as we do every weekday, starting around 1 p.m., going throughout the afternoon, covering a wide range of topics. Right now, we're talking about a big event that is returning once again to Portland, the Portland Retro Gaming Expo, happening this weekend. And we always like taking a look at this. If you're a fan of video games of any way, shape, kind, age, all of it, you will definitely be interested in this. But we're going to be talking a little bit more about it right now from the Portland Retro Gaming Expo. We have Josh Hamblin and Toby Wickwire. And Josh and Toby, thank you, for joining us here. I'm sure this is the culmination of a whole lot of work, as always, to get this going and get this up and running. But for anyone who's new to it, could you give a little history of the Retro Gaming Expo and how far back this has been going?
Sure. Thanks for having us. So it started really in the 90s in Seattle. And then when one of the people that was running an event there moved to Portland, we started here in 2006. So it's started in a small hotel convention space. And then we've been now at the Oregon Convention Center for many, many years.
Yeah, and that's definitely a huge event, and going from that small, basically a hotel to where it is now, obviously has grown, and that shows the popularity of retro gaming. And looking at it just as an overall picture, what do you think it is about retro gaming, whether it's arcades, whether it's consoles, or whatever concept you want to look at it as? What is it that makes it so popular?
Yeah, so, for me, it brings people back to their childhood a lot of times. It's just really nostalgic. So we've created a huge space now. It's over 250,000 square feet, like several hundred vendors, and the arcade area is always a huge hit. But then we bring in panelists, talk about origins of games, how they're developed, anything from buying and selling and trading to just in general, the history of video games.
So yeah, and some of that, like you mentioned, just being that nostalgia factor of games that you played and bringing that back, but also just the fact that the industry has grown so much since back in the 90s, whatever that was, that this, really started going. The exponential side of it, like how hard is it to keep up with even what is considered retro when you're talking about a retro gaming expo?
Yeah, I mean, that bar is always moving. So some people have a definition that it's the previous generation or X number of generations from what we're currently playing. But for us, I think we are really inclusive of all types of video games, but with a focus on retro. So maybe mid 2000s and older is what a lot of people would probably consider retro.
Yeah, this is kind of the core of the show. But even this year, we're having a brand new pinball launched, the X-Men by Stern. So and a lot of our tournament series are newer games as well. So we try to provide some entertainment for the whole family.
Yeah, so currently crossing that board, but yeah, as you mentioned, that's a new game, but with a retro, concept. So it's all mixing in there. And you mentioned some of the other things that you provide. So it's not just the gaming, but there's also people having competitions, and there's also panels and things like that. Going to one of those, the competitions, can you tell us what to expect this year and what kind of competitions that you're going to be having?
Yeah, there is the Tetris tournament. There is a pinball tournament. There's a general selection of a bunch of different kinds of video game tournaments. I think that's it, right?
There's some fighting game tournaments.
Yeah, fighting games.
We're having a Mortal Kombat tournament, some Street Fighter stuff, but the Tetris is a really big event here every year, and it brings out a lot of people.
Yeah, the Tetris one, I've been there several times and watched that. I mean, those guys are insane of how good they are.
Yeah.
It's nuts. It's frustrating sometimes because I'm like, I will never be able to do that ever. but it's
feel bad about your talent in video games just watching them play.
So, I mean, when you look at that and you look at something like Tetris, with you're having the championship there and all of that, what is it about that game in particular? And that's what is always curious to me. What is it do you think about Tetris that it just maintains such a popularity and almost a cult status, even though everybody knows what it is?
I think it's simple to play at a low level. Everyone can pick it up and at least understand it. There's not a bunch of things to learn and memorize. But if you really, really want to excel at it, then yes, there are all these different techniques, and I'm sure there's different theories about how to do it. So it's kind of I don't know, like chess. Like you can play it at a low level or at a high level. It's kind of for everyone.
Right. Yeah, we've noticed just in the last several years, the techniques have been evolving, and the groups of players that are excelling have actually gotten younger and younger. And we're seeing now a lot of the highest level are teenagers, and they've developed new techniques to just go faster and score higher. But this year we're doing a throwback, like more classic style playing. It's gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's also an interesting aspect there, that that it's teenagers who are playing at this high level. It's a very old game, but something that they're still finding, and people are finding all the time and still playing it. So that just adds into to all of that, to that cult status of it. For this year compared to last year, and since you mentioned that the retro bar is always moving depending on what people determine is retro, what are some of the biggest changes that you've seen over this last year?
In retro games, gosh, I don't know. Yeah.
Well, for me, I think the 3DS store is closing, and Xbox have like 360. A lot of that I've seen in my store has shifted. A lot of people are looking at 360 as more of a retro console, and the handheld side of things has kind of become more collectible as well. That's just what I've noticed. Some of the big differences from our show this year are we actually expanded. We have a whole other room, and then we're having part of the vendors open on Friday as well this year. So
Yeah, more stuff to do on Friday
more
for
stuff
sure
to
this
do.
year.
Yep.
If Friday is the only day you can go, there's more to do than
Yep.
what you could do in the past.
Nice. So keeping on and adding more and more. You mentioned something about the handheld consoles, becoming valuable, and that's another aspect to this too, because there's going to be people with booths and with vendors and selling things, and I'm sure buying some things. But for that, what have you noticed is the trend for the most, I say the most valuable thing right now, the most valued commodity when it comes to retro gaming, whether it's the game or the console or one of the, or both?
I'll let Josh answer that. That's his
Well,
wheelhouse.
I mean, typically the consoles don't hold the most value because they're not nearly as rare. They're easier to find. And that kind of just gets people in the door, right? They get a console, a controller, and everything, and then they have to find someone to play it. And then that's where you start getting into the different lines, in a family tree, where you could go down the one path of popularity or rarity or a certain niche type of games, and then that's where you find the value skyrocketing, just with the supply and demand. So I definitely the games is where most of the money is, and then you have a lot of people that have gotten into collecting like retail displays and things like that as well. So signage and just vintage, light up signs, neons, even vintage clothing, stuff like that has really become really collectible these days as well.
And that's the type of stuff that we'll have in our live auction on Saturday night. Is some of that like stuff you don't see every day, and not all of the vendors at the show will have that type of item.
That's now I'm curious about that, and anybody watching too. Think about if you have some stuff stored in boxes somewhere that you forgot about, and it's probably in good or if it's in good condition, this could be something you definitely want to pay attention to, or if you want to pick up some of those pieces. For this being in Portland, I just want to ask it, a specific question here. What is it that you think about the city of Portland and just the region, the Northwest here in general, that makes this such a great place to hold something like a retro gaming expo?
I think there's a real culture of hobbyists and sort of geeky tech and collectible things that people have just been into for a long time. Like that's sort of my world. So all types of collectibles, whether it's toys or video games or whatever, there's just always been a really great community around that stuff in the Portland metro area. There's always been these type of events and different shops catering to those people. And I think that sort of, because those things exist, then more and more people not really move here for that, but sort of become interested because there's a store, more people see that stuff, they want to buy more of it, and that makes more stores open, and it just kind of it's a cycle.
Well, yeah, not only that, but going back to the history of video games, we have Microsoft, Nintendo right in our backyard.
Yeah.
Up north, we have a lot of the signage and other developers of video games in the 80s were here in the Portland, Beaverton area, down in Grants Pass. Even PlayStation has a campus down in the Bay Area. So the west/northwest area is just kind of the backyard for video games. And talking with people from around the other country, around our country, there's a shortage of that type of stuff elsewhere. And so when we see stuff getting sold a lot of times online, is going out east, it's going to the Midwest because they just don't have as much access to it.
Yeah, it's true.
So we've got a rich history here, and then also the just the people in general, yeah, who are into that. And I mean, I think this is something too that's supportive of different Comic Cons, different they can all kind of cross reference in a little bit as well as far as people being interested in all of it. Okay, one more question for you, and then we're going to wrap up with a little bit more of a talk about the Retro Gaming Expo. For each of you, if the bar is now mid-2000s for retro, what is your favorite retro video game of all time?
Well, I'm old, so I don't care about 2000s video games at all. My favorite games, my favorite system is the Mattel Intellivision. So my favorite game, I think, playing that was the Tron Deadly Discs or Astro Smash maybe. But I personally don't collect or play video games anymore. I not recently, a few years ago, moved and sold all my collection. So I'm just involved in organizing the show, not so much as a collector anymore.
All right, and Josh?
If you don't know what that is, you'll have to look it up. But my childhood and what I found in the industry is most people's favorite things go back to their childhood and those memories. And so for me, mid 80s NES for me. I was a huge fan of the Mario and Zelda series. And kind of a not so common one as Bucky O'Hare was a really fun one for me as well. And then, like most people in the late 90s and early 2000s, I kind of lost interest, and then now I'm getting back into it.
It's coming full circle and back around to what you're into.
Yeah, just like our attendees, I'm also trying to kind of relive what I enjoy.
Reconnect, and I think that's probably something that a lot of people too. It's going to be that those first experiences, those first games that you were playing. That's what it is. But then you have a 17-year-old playing Tetris and beating people in that. So that's another interesting facet too. Well, for everybody who's going to be coming out there this weekend, let them know. You mentioned that there's more things on Friday, but we can give everybody just the details of how many days and how they can go about getting tickets and all of that.
Yeah, it's Friday through Sunday at the Oregon Convention Center, and you can get your tickets online at retrogamingexpo.com.
Yep.
There we go.
So Friday is going to be noon to 10. That's the biggest change this year. So we'll have the arcade and part of the vendor floor open this year on Friday.
So that's the expanded option for everybody who's been there before. If you've been there before, you know exactly what it is, and it's going to be fun. And there's even more now. If you haven't been, it's a good time. There's lots to check out, lots to do, and there's a bunch of games to play. So it's kind of good for everybody on that. Mine, by the way, I will go back to the NES classic, Bionic Commando. For some reason, I loved that game. I don't know why. I haven't played it in a very long time. It probably wasn't that good, but it's stuck in my mind as I liked it.
So, it's got a cult following, like
does
Bucky O'Hare that Josh mentioned. Yeah, they're both pretty popular.
Oh, interesting. Okay, all right.
Not alone. Come meet some friends.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, I do. Well, I just don't tell them. Okay, so again, Retro Gaming Expo coming up this weekend, and you guys, thank you very much for joining us. I really appreciate it, being on here and talking about that. And good luck with the festival this year, the expo, and everybody's can go down and have a good time.
Thank you, Greg.
And for everybody watching, this is Fox 12 Now. We are live here from the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, and obviously we get to have longer segments here and conversations. Coming up at 1:30, we're going to be joined by Eric Goranson from Around the House Northwest, and he's going to have some tips and tricks on how to repair your home appliances for cheaper than other places. So this is going to be his hacks for that, so he's joining us for that. And we've got, coming up at 2 o'clock, Joel McHale and Curtis Stone. Curtis Stone is an Australian chef. Joel McHale you know who Joel McHale is. He's going to join us, and he's going to answer a couple of questions about community. So if you're a big community fan, you will want to join us at 2 o'clock and hear what he has to say. But otherwise, thanks for being here. Whatever platform you're on, come right back here in about 12 minutes or so. I will talk to you then. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12.